the invisible guardian. She sat on the school steps for 3 years, homeless and ignored. Nobody knew she was an ex-FBI agent. Nobody knew she was watching, waiting, protecting, until the day a gunman came for 200 children. Welcome to those who left a trace, the channel that honors the forgotten heroes who changed the world in silence. Today I'm going to tell you about a woman everyone ignored, until 200 children needed her most. Before we begin this incredible story, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe real heroes are hiding in plain sight, hit that subscribe button, because this story will change how you see the world around you. October 15th, 2023, 7:47 a.m. The morning mist clings to the concrete steps of Lincoln Elementary School like a shroud. Margaret Chen sits motionless on the third step from the bottom, her weathered cardboard sign propped against her knees reading "Homeless Veteran." Anything helps, God bless. The black Sharpa letters are faded from 3 years of rain, sun, and indifference. Her gray hair, unwashed for weeks, hangs in stringy clumps from beneath a torn baseball cap that once bore the FBI logo. Now so faded it's barely visible. The morning rush of parents and children flows past her like water around a stone. Nobody looks. Nobody stops. Nobody knows that 3 years ago, she was FBI Special Agent Margaret Chen, hostage negotiator for the Bureau's crisis response team, holder of the Medal of Valor, and the woman who talked 47 armed suspects into surrender without a single shot fired. Margaret's trained eyes catalog every face, every movement, every potential threat. It's 7:49 a.m. now, and she knows exactly what to expect. Mrs. Rodriguez will arrive in her beat-up Honda Civic at 7:52, struggling to get her twin boys out of car seats while balancing their lunchboxes. She'll drop exactly 2 quarters into Margaret's cup, the same amount every day for 3 months. The woman doesn't know that Margaret memorized her license plate number, her home address, and the fact that she works double shifts at the hospital to support her family. At 7:50 a.m., Principal Davidson emerges from the building, checking his watch with the nervous energy of a man who's been in education for 37 years, but still feels like he's failing. He'll glance at Margaret, look away quickly, then check his watch again. He doesn't know that Margaret has been watching him, protecting his school, studying every person who approaches these steps with the intensity of a federal agent. The autumn wind cuts through Margaret's 5 layers of jackets, a red windbreaker over a torn navy hoodie, over a flannel shirt, over a thermal top, over a stained t-shirt that once read Quantico Training Academy. Each layer tells a story of her descent from respected federal agent to invisible street person. The wind carries the scent of autumn leaves and children's laughter, sounds that once filled her own home when her daughter Emma was alive. At 7:51 a.m., Margaret's peripheral vision catches movement that doesn't belong. A black Honda Civic. Not Mrs. Rodriguez's dented one, but a newer model with tinted windows, pulls up across the street. Margaret's trained eyes immediately catalog the details. Dented rear bumper, expired temporary tags hanging in an odd angle, a spider web crack in the passenger side window. The car idles for exactly 47 seconds before the engine cuts. In her FBI days, Margaret would have called it in immediately. Today, she's just another invisible person on the street. But Margaret Chen is far from invisible. She's been watching, waiting, remembering. 3 years ago, she was Agent Margaret Chen, badge number 7749, assigned to the FBI's crisis response team out of the Washington field office. She specialized in hostage negotiations, crisis intervention, and threat assessment. Her success rate was legendary. 47 successful negotiations without a single casualty. Her colleagues called her the Whisperer because she could talk anyone down from anything. The driver of the Honda doesn't move, doesn't get out, just sits there, watching the school entrance with the same intensity Margaret has seen in 100 criminal profiles. The same 1,000-yard stare she studied in pre-incident surveillance footage. The same rigid posture that screams threat assessment. Her instincts, dormant for 3 years, begin to stir like a sleeping giant awakening. Margaret shifts slightly on the concrete step, positioning herself to get a better view of the vehicle's occupants. The movement sends a sharp pain through her left hip, a reminder of the car accident that took her family and left her with a permanent limp. But the pain is nothing compared to the alarm bells screaming in her trained mind. Something is very, very wrong. "Mom, why is that lady always here?" asks a small voice that cuts through Margaret's surveillance trance. She looks up to see 8-year-old Emma Patterson, the same name as her deceased daughter, tugging on her mother's sleeve, pointing directly at her with the honest curiosity of a child who hasn't learned to pretend homeless people don't exist. The mother, Jennifer Patterson, quickly pulls her daughter away, whispering something about not staring at homeless people and some people make bad choices. Margaret's heart aches, but not for the reasons people might think. 3 years ago, she had a daughter too, Emma Chen, 8 years old, blonde hair and pigtails, bright blue eyes that sparkled when she laughed. Killed in a car accident along with her husband David, while Margaret was 200 miles away in Philadelphia, talking a suicidal man off the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. The irony still burns like acid in her chest. She saved a stranger's life that day, a 34-year-old accountant named Michael Torres who'd lost his job and his marriage in the same week. Margaret talked to him for 4 hours, convinced him to step away from the ledge, to seek help, to choose life. While she was saving Michael Torres, drunk driver Robert Kimmel was plowing his pickup truck into her family's sedan at 65 miles per hour. The guilt consumed her like cancer. The FBI offered counseling, support, time off, reassignment. They offered her the Medal of Valor for saving Michael Torres. She refused it. How could she accept an award for saving one life while losing the two that mattered most? She couldn't handle the pity in her colleagues' eyes, couldn't bear to negotiate other families' crises when she'd failed to protect her own. 6 months after the funeral, she resigned from the bureau, sold everything, and disappeared into the streets where nobody asks questions about your past. Margaret's attention snaps back to the Honda. 7:54 a.m. The driver is still there, still watching, still waiting. She can make out a figure in the driver's seat. Young male, wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. His hands are gripping the steering wheel with the white-knuckled intensity of someone preparing for action. Margaret's FBI training kicks in automatically. Threat assessment, behavioral analysis, pattern recognition. The timing is wrong. Parents drop their kids off between 7:45 and 8:15 a.m., but this car isn't participating in the drop-off routine. The driver isn't checking his phone, isn't looking at paperwork, isn't exhibiting any of the normal behaviors of someone waiting for a legitimate reason. He's watching the school entrance with predatory focus. Margaret reaches into her tattered backpack, a faded black JanSport that once carried her FBI case files, and pulls out a small notebook. She's been keeping surveillance logs for 3 months, documenting every person who approaches the school, every vehicle that doesn't belong, every behavioral anomaly that triggers her trained instincts. Page after page of meticulous notes written in the same precise handwriting she once used for federal reports. Entry number 847. Black Honda Civic. License plate partially obscured. Driver male 18 to 25. Suspicious positioning. No participation in normal drop-off patterns. But this isn't the first time she's seen this car. Margaret flips back through her notes, scanning entries from the past 2 weeks. There, October 8, 7:52 a.m. Black Honda. Same license. Driver reconnaissance behavior. October 10th, 8:01 a.m. Honda returned. Driver using binoculars. October 12th, 7:49 a.m. Honda. Driver taking photographs of school entrance. A pattern. A escalating pattern that every FBI profiler would recognize as pre-incident surveillance. Someone is planning something, and Margaret Chen is the only person who knows it's happening. At 7:56 a.m., the school bell rings its first warning. In 19 minutes, 347 children will be locked inside Lincoln Elementary School. Margaret has counted them every day for 3 months. 347 innocent lives going about their morning routines, completely unaware that danger is watching them from across the street. Margaret's hand moves instinctively to the one thing she's kept from her old life, her FBI badge. She'd told herself she kept it for identification purposes, but deep down, she knew this day might come. The badge is tarnished, the photo 3 years out of date, but it's real. It's proof of who she used to be. who she might need to become again. The Honda's engine starts. Margaret's pulse quickens as she watches the driver check his mirrors, adjust his seat, and take several deep breaths. These are the final preparations of someone about to act. Someone about to cross a line from planning to execution. Cliffhanger. But what they didn't know was that Margaret had been watching the school for 3 months, ever since she'd overheard 2 teenagers at the bus stop discussing the perfect target and making them all pay. And the man in the black Honda? He'd been circling the block every morning for the past week, photographing entrances, timing security routines, and preparing for something that would make Margaret's worst FBI nightmares come true. 8:15 a.m. The school bell rings its final call, and Margaret watches 347 children disappear behind Lincoln Elementary's doors like sheep entering a pen. She counts them, just like she has every morning for 93 days. Tommy Martinez, age 8, who always drops his lunch money. Sarah Williams, age 9, who walks alone because the other kids think she's weird. Marcus Thompson, age 10, the class bully who doesn't know he's creating future victims. Each face is cataloged in Margaret's memory, each child a potential casualty in whatever's about to unfold. The black Honda is still there, engine running, exhaust visible in the crisp morning air. Margaret's FBI training is screaming at her. Every instinct honed by 15 years of federal service. Every alarm bell tuned by 1,000 hours of behavioral analysis. This is it. This is the moment when surveillance becomes action, when planning becomes execution. At 8:17 a.m., Margaret notices something that makes her blood run cold. The driver is wearing gloves. Black tactical gloves in 50-degree weather. In her FBI experience, people wear gloves for 2 reasons: to avoid leaving fingerprints or to maintain grip on weapons. Neither reason bodes well for 347 children. Margaret's mind races through threat assessment protocols. Active shooter incidents typically follow predictable patterns. Extended planning phase, final surveillance, acquisition of weapons, selection of optimal timing for maximum casualties. The Honda has been conducting surveillance for 2 weeks. The timing coincides with morning assembly when all children are contained in the building. The driver's behavior suggests final preparations. At 8:19 a.m., the Honda's passenger door opens. Margaret's trained eyes immediately assess the figure emerging from a vehicle. Male, approximately 19 to 20 years old, 5 feet 8 inches, thin build, wearing dark clothing and a backpack. But it's not the backpack that terrifies Margaret. It's the large duffel bag the young man pulls from the back seat. Heavy, awkward, the kind of bag she's seen carried by people with very bad intentions. Margaret's heart pounds as muscle memory kicks in. She's transported back to Quantico, to the FBI Academy's Crisis Response Training Facility. She can hear Instructor Davies' voice. The average active shooter incident lasts 12 minutes. In that time, without intervention, casualty rates increase exponentially. Your job is to disrupt the timeline, establish communication, and create psychological barriers to violence. The young man, Margaret mentally catalogs him as Subject Alpha, begins walking toward the school with mechanical precision. His gait is rehearsed, purposeful, the walk of someone who's practiced this route. His face is pale, focused, exhibiting what FBI profilers call 1,000-yard stare, the dissociative state that precedes violent action. Margaret stands slowly, her joints protesting after 3 years of sleeping on concrete and eating from dumpsters. But her mind is razor-sharp, calculating distances, angles, options. The school's main entrance is 67 feet away. Subject Alpha is walking at approximately 3 miles per hour, giving her maybe 90 seconds before he reaches the building. 90 seconds to prevent a massacre. Her eyes scan the area with professional precision. 2 crossing guards, Mrs. Henderson, age 74, and Mr. Kowalski, age 68. Both retirees who volunteer their time and will be liabilities in a crisis situation. One jogger with noise-canceling headphones, completely oblivious to surroundings. A construction worker fixing a streetlight, too far away to provide assistance. No police in sight. No security visible at the school entrance. Margaret's FBI training takes over completely. She reaches into her tattered backpack and retrieves her service weapon, a Glock 22 she's carried for 15 years, maintained despite her circumstances. kept loaded despite her circumstances. She also pulls out her FBI badge, the one thing she's kept from her old life. The badge is tarnished, the photo outdated, but it's real. It's proof of who she used to be, who she needs to become again. At 8:21 a.m., Subject Alpha is 50 feet from the school entrance. Margaret can see his face clearly now. Young, pale, eyes filled with pain and rage she recognizes from hundreds of case files. This isn't random violence. This is personal. Someone who attended this school, who suffered here, who's returned to settle a score with innocent children who had nothing to do with his pain. Margaret's mind flashes to her own daughter, Emma, who would have been 11 years old now. Emma, who loved school, who trusted adults to protect her, who died because Margaret wasn't there when she needed her most. The parallel is devastating and motivating. She failed to protect Emma, but she won't fail to protect these 347 children. The weight of her service weapon feels familiar in her hand. 15 years of federal service, 47 successful negotiations, countless hours of training. But Margaret Chen doesn't want to shoot anyone today. She wants to talk. She wants to understand. She wants to find humanity in Subject Alpha before he loses it completely. At 8:22 a.m., Margaret makes her decision. She conceals her weapon in her jacket, keeps her badge ready, and begins moving towards Subject Alpha. Her homeless shuffle transforms into the confident stride of a federal agent. For the first time in 3 years, Special Agent Margaret Chen is back on duty. Subject Alpha is 35 feet from the school entrance when Margaret calls out to him. Her voice cuts through the morning air with authority she'd forgotten she possessed. "Excuse me, son. I need to talk to you." The young man stops, turns, and Margaret sees his face clearly for the first time. Pale, drawn, with the hollow eyes of someone who's made peace with dying. His right hand grips the duffel bag with white knuckles, and Margaret can see the outline of what's inside, rectangular shapes that could only be weapons, probably semi-automatic rifles based on the size and weight. "Stay away from me, lady," he says, his voice cracking with adolescent uncertainty despite his deadly intentions. Up close, Margaret can see the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. His breathing is shallow, rapid, the physiological response to extreme stress. His pupils are dilated, suggesting either drug use or the adrenaline surge that precedes violence. Margaret raises her hand slowly, showing empty palms in a universal gesture of non-threat. "I'm not going to hurt you," she says, her voice calm and professional. "I just want to talk. My name is Margaret. What's yours?" It's Negotiation 101. Establish rapport, humanize the interaction, find common ground. Even dress in rags, even after 3 years on the streets, the training is still there, muscle memory encoded in her DNA. She can see the internal conflict in Subject Alpha's eyes, the part of him that wants to be saved fighting against the part that wants to destroy. Cliffhanger. Subject Alpha's grip on the duffel bag loosens slightly as Margaret's voice reaches something human inside him. But what they didn't know was that Margaret had exactly 17 minutes of specialized training in this scenario. Crisis negotiation with armed subjects in educational settings, and she was about to use every second of it to save 347 innocent lives. 8:31 a.m. "I don't want to talk," Subject Alpha replies, but he doesn't move away from Margaret's position. In her FBI experience, this is crucial. If they're willing to stop, they're willing to listen. If they're willing to listen, they can be reached. "I'm here to do something important. Something that needs to be done." Margaret nods, keeping her voice steady and non-threatening. "I understand. Sometimes the world feels like it's falling apart, and we think we need to take action. I've been there. Can you tell me what's made you feel this way?" For a moment, something human flickers across his face. Pain, confusion, the look of a young man who's lost his way and doesn't know how to find it again. "You wouldn't understand," he says, but his voice lacks conviction. "Nobody understands what it's like." "Try me," Margaret says, taking a small step closer. She's now within 15 feet of him, close enough to act if necessary, but far enough to avoid triggering his flight or fight response. "I've seen more pain than you might think. I've lost people too. I know what it feels like when the world doesn't make sense anymore." Margaret's mind is processing multiple layers of information simultaneously. Subject Alpha's body language suggests internal conflict. His stance is aggressive, but his eyes are pleading. His weapon is accessible, but he hasn't reached for it. He's young, probably a former student, carrying trauma that's been building for years. This is personal revenge, not random violence. My name is David, he says quietly, and Margaret files the information away. First name basis, good. Personal revelation, better. David Reynolds. I'm 19 years old, and I was supposed to graduate from this school 2 years ago. The admission hangs in the air like confession. Margaret nods, filing away every detail. David Reynolds, 19, former student. This is personal, just as she suspected. She can see the security camera mounted above the school entrance. Wonders if anyone inside is watching this conversation. If police are being called. She hopes not. Sirens and tactical teams will only escalate the situation. What happened 2 years ago, David? Margaret asks gently. She's buying time, gathering information, building rapport. Every minute David spends talking is a minute he's not shooting. Every word he speaks is a window into his pain, a potential key to defusing his rage. They destroyed my life, David says, his voice growing stronger, angrier. The teachers, the principal, the other students, they made every day hell. And when I tried to get help, they said I was the problem. They said I was overreacting, that I needed to toughen up. Margaret recognizes the pattern immediately. Bullying, isolation, systemic failure. It's a story she's heard in FBI behavioral analysis briefings, in incident reports, in the psychological profiles of school shooters. The warning signs were there: social isolation, academic problems, behavioral changes, cries for help that went unheeded. That must have been incredibly painful, Margaret says, her voice filled with genuine empathy. To feel like nobody was listening, nobody cared about what you were going through. They didn't care, David confirms, his grip on the duffel bag tightening. Not when Marcus Thompson and his friends threw me down the stairs. Not when they shoved my head in a toilet and posted a video online. Not when they made fake social media accounts to send me death threats. The principal said boys will be boys. The teacher said I needed to learn to stand up for myself. Margaret's heart breaks for the boy David used to be, but her FBI training keeps her focused on the man he's become. You said Marcus Thompson. Is he still a student here? He's in 6th grade now, David says, and Margaret can see the rage building in his eyes. Still bullying kids. Still getting away with it. But they'll care today. They'll remember my name today. The threat is becoming more specific, more imminent. Margaret needs to de-escalate, but she also needs to understand the full scope of David's plans. David, I need you to know something about me. I'm a trained negotiator. I worked for the FBI for 15 years. I've talked to people in your situation before, and I know there's another way. David's eyes widen with surprise and suspicion. You're a cop? Margaret admits, I'm not anymore. I lost my family 3 years ago, my husband and my 8-year-old daughter. I know what it feels like when the world takes everything from you. I know what it's like to want to make the pain stop. For the first time, David's aggressive posture softens. You're homeless, he says, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. What happened? Margaret sees the opening and takes it. I was negotiating a hostage situation in Philadelphia. A man was threatening to jump off a bridge. I spent 4 hours talking to him, convincing him to choose life. While I was saving him, a drunk driver killed my family. I saved a stranger and lost everything that mattered. David's hand moves away from the duffel bag. That's horrible. I'm sorry. Thank you, Margaret says. But David, the pain I felt, the rage, the need for revenge, the desire to make others hurt like I was hurting, none of that brought my family back. And killing innocent children won't heal what was done to you. It will only create more pain, more families destroyed. David looks at the school, then back at Margaret. There are 200 kids in that building. Most of them are innocent. Even the ones who hurt me. They were just kids too. But some of them made my life hell. I understand, Margaret says. But David, you're not that scared kid anymore. You're a man now. You have choices. You can choose to be defined by what happened to you, or you can choose to define yourself by what you do next. David's internal struggle is visible on his face. What am I supposed to do? I can't go back to my old life. I can't pretend none of this happened. I've planned this for months. I've written letters, made videos, bought the weapons. Everyone's going to see those videos and know what they did to me. Margaret nods. I understand you want people to know your story. But David, there are other ways to tell it. Ways that don't involve hurting innocent people. Ways that might actually prevent other kids from going through what you went through. Cliffhanger. David looks at the school, then at Margaret, then at the duffel bag containing enough firepower to kill dozens of children. I don't know how to stop, he whispers. I've been planning this for so long. It's all I have left. What they didn't know was that Margaret was about to offer him something nobody else could. A second chance, a purpose, and a way to turn his pain into protection for others. 8:47 a.m. Margaret reaches into her jacket and pulls out her FBI badge, tarnished and worn, but still bearing the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. David, I want you to look at this. This badge represents 15 years of my life dedicated to protecting people. I've talked to 47 armed individuals, and every single one of them walked away alive. I've never had to shoot anyone, never had to take a life. Do you know why? David stares at the badge, his eyes wide with recognition of its authority. Why? Because everyone has a choice. Even in their darkest moment, even when they think there's no way out, they still have a choice. You have a choice right now, David. You can choose to be remembered as a monster, or you can choose to be remembered as someone who overcame. Margaret takes another step closer, now within 10 feet of David. She can see the sweat staining his shirt, smell the fear and adrenaline radiating from him. Tell me about the weapons in the bag. David, what did you bring? David's voice is barely a whisper. 2 AR-15s, 400 rounds of ammunition, smoke grenades. I've been planning this for 8 months. I studied other incidents, learned from their mistakes. I was going to be more effective. The clinical way he describes his arsenal chills Margaret to the bone, but she keeps her voice steady. That's a lot of firepower. You could hurt a lot of people with that, but you haven't used it yet. That tells me part of you doesn't want to. I don't want to hurt innocent kids, David admits, but I can't let them get away with what they did. Marcus Thompson, Principal Davidson, Mrs. Miller, the guidance counselor, who said I was making it up, they have to pay. Margaret nods. I understand you want justice. But David, what you're describing isn't justice. It's revenge. And revenge destroys everything it touches, including the person seeking it. I've seen it happen. How? David asks. How have you seen it? Margaret takes a deep breath. 3 years ago, after my family died, I wanted revenge too. I wanted to find the drunk driver who killed them and make him pay. His name was Robert Kimmel. He got 5 years in prison for vehicular manslaughter. 5 years for 2 lives. I was consumed with rage. David listens intently, his grip on the duffel bag loosening further. I spent months planning my revenge, Margaret continues. I learned his schedule, his routines, his vulnerabilities. I could have killed him easily, but you know what stopped me? What? I realized that becoming a killer wouldn't bring my family back. It would just create more grieving families, more pain, more cycles of revenge. So instead, I chose to disappear. I chose to punish myself instead of him. And for 3 years, I've been living on these streets, punishing myself for failing to protect the people I loved most. David's eyes fill with tears. But you didn't fail. You were doing your job, saving someone else. That's what everyone told me, Margaret says. But I couldn't forgive myself. Just like you can't forgive the people who hurt you. But David, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about choosing to live instead of choosing to destroy. Margaret can see the internal war raging behind David's eyes. The part of him that wants to be saved is fighting against the part that wants to destroy. She needs to tip the balance, to give him something to live for instead of something to die for. David, I want to make you an offer, she says. Give me the weapons, surrender to the authorities, and I'll help you tell your story the right way. I'll help you turn your pain into purpose. We can work together to prevent other kids from going through what you went through. How? David asks. How could we do that? School safety programs, anti-bullying initiatives, crisis intervention training for teachers. We can make sure that what happened to you never happens to another child. But that can only happen if you choose to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. David looks at the school, then at Margaret, then at the duffel bag. I've been carrying this pain for so long, I don't know who I am without it. You're David Reynolds, Margaret says firmly. You're a 19-year-old man who survived hell and lived to tell about it. You're someone who can help other kids who are going through what you went through. You're someone who can choose to be a hero instead of a villain. David's hand moves to the duffel bag zipper. Margaret tenses, ready to act if necessary. But instead of opening it, he slowly sits on the ground and steps back. I don't want to hurt anyone, he says, tears streaming down his face. I just wanted them to understand what they did to me. Margaret approaches slowly, her FBI badge still visible in her hand. They will understand, David, but not because you hurt them, because you chose to be better than they were, because you chose to break the cycle. She reaches the duffel bag, and David doesn't stop her. Inside, she finds exactly what he described, 2 AR-15 rifles, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and a detailed plan for attacking the school during morning assembly when casualties will be maximized. David, I need you to know something, Margaret says, zipping the bag closed. What you just did, choosing to stop, choosing to talk, choosing to trust me, that takes more courage than pulling a trigger ever could. You're not weak for stopping. You're strong. David collapses to his knees. 3 years of pain and rage finally breaking through. I'm so tired, he sobs. I'm so tired of being angry, of being hurt, of being alone. Margaret kneels beside him. Her FBI training telling her to maintain distance. Her humanity telling her to offer comfort. You're not alone anymore, David. I'm here, and I'm going to help you. In the distance, Margaret can hear sirens approaching. Someone inside the school must have called the police. She helps David to his feet, making sure he's visible and non-threatening when the officers arrive. What happens now? David asks. Now you face the consequences of your actions, Margaret says. But you do it as someone who chose to stop, someone who chose to get help, someone who chose to live. And I'll be there with you every step of the way. Cliffhanger. As police cars surround them, Margaret realizes this isn't the end of David's story. It's the beginning. What they didn't know was that this moment would spark a revolution in school safety, create a new model for intervention, and prove that sometimes the people society throws away are the ones who save us all.